Good afternoon and welcome to our Goizueta Evening MBA Admissions Chat. My name is Angela Bostic. I'll be moderating your chat today. I'm the oversee marketing and communications for the Goizueta Business School and work alongside these wonderful ladies who oversee evening MBA admissions on the chat. So today we'll be talking a lot about the ins and outs of the admissions process, but we'll start with a little bit of housekeeping. As you note when you're logged in, you can see a place to submit your questions, and you should ask any question at any point in time during the chats themselves. I'll make sure before we move through each one of the slides that we address those questions with the ladies to my left and make sure we get your questions answered. If we don't get them answered on air, there'll be folks behind camera who are able to answer and respond. And then afterwards, there'll be a follow-up email sent in about a week from now with the copy of the video itself and the slides from the presentation today. So you can review and continue to keep that information as you're planning your application. So without further ado, I'm going to let Kathleen and Rebecca introduce themselves and we'll get started.
Hi everyone, I'm Kathleen Edwards. I'm Senior Associate Director of Evening MBA Admissions, so part of the Evening MBA Admissions Committee. I'm also a graduate of the evening program from way back in 2008, but I still remember.
Do not say way back. I graduated before that.
I know, true. So I've been part of the admissions office since 2007, so a good bit of Emory experience, Goizueta admissions experience, and happy to be here today.
Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca Sandage. I am the Assistant Director of MBA Admissions, so I too work with Kathleen here to help recruit the next class of evening MBA students. I've been with the program for right around 2 years, and before that I was at the School of Medicine here at Emory, so too have a lot of Emory experience and happy to share that with you today.
Fantastic. So I'm going to put the agenda up on the screen so you can see what we're going to talk about. We're going to start with some program overview. We'll talk about how the admissions team crafts the class. There's a lot of secret sauce that goes into their process. They'll share a little bit of those ins and outs. We'll talk about the factors that the committee considers when they're planning the incoming class, as well as when to apply and then what to do after you finish your application, because you're right now in the middle of finishing your application, nod your head, and then you'll want to know what you're going to do once that happens. And then the next steps you can take to make sure that your process is happening smoothly. So with that, again, make sure you submit your questions throughout the process and we'll get started.
All right. So the first thing we like to talk about here is we understand that you have a lot of options out there in terms of considering how to further your education and pursue your MBA. And we at Goizueta think that we have a unique advantage, and we call that the Goizueta advantage. And that really starts with the fact that we are a part of a world-class business school across all of our programs. And the evening MBA program is one of the hallmark programs, I'd like to say, being ranked #1. In the Southeast. And we also leverage the fact that we are in Atlanta, which is a global business hub that has a number of Fortune 500 companies headquartered here, and those people would be your classmates in our classroom. And it's an intimate learning environment, meaning that it's small. You'll get to know the people to your left and to the right, the people who are in the cohorts in front of you and in the other MBA classes here. So you get to network and leverage those connections in a small environment that allows you to build in-depth relationships. And then we also really focus on the idea of values and leadership here at Goizueta. It's something that will take place in all the business decisions that you have to make. And so it's a very important part of the curriculum here that you will experience. And it comes up in all the classroom discussions. And it's a cornerstone to the curriculum that you'll get here. And in addition to that leadership perspective, it's also the global perspective. Our faculty are leading scholars in a number of areas, but they also have practical business experience that has footprints across all the continents on the globe. So every discussion is infused with this global perspective because it's their practical perspective. And then it's bookended with their academic or scholarly research. And because it's in a small environment, you really get to know your faculty just as well as you know the colleagues that are sitting to the left and to the right of you. And then, of course, we understand this is a practical program. It's a practical degree. And so there's opportunities to take what you learn in class and apply it the next day in your work environment. But we also make sure that there's a number of experiential learning opportunities for you to encounter to make sure that you're able to take these theoretical concepts and apply them in a practical manner the next day and going forward. So we like to say that we do all of those things very well here at Goizueta. The next part of that is how we actually do or deliver on that Goizueta advantage. And so we're going to talk about what you get in terms of the curriculum. First of all, a few years ago, we reached out to corporate recruiters and alums and faculty to say, how should the curriculum be structured with the goal of educating and training the next business leaders? And so the curriculum you get was designed with that in mind, that you would be a part, or you're going to be leading the next crop of business leaders, that you're going to be a business manager. So the 9 core courses you get in your first 3 semesters are really designed to expose you to business fundamentals that we feel that every person who has an MBA should know and be comfortable talking about. So marketing and statistics, accounting, which everyone loves. So those core courses that give you just a working knowledge of all of those things. You then move into your elective courses. And here at Goizueta, you have over 90 electives to choose from, and you can choose from a myriad of topics, but there's enough flexibility in the curriculum where you can decide to specialize in 1 or 2 areas. So if you want to declare a concentration, we offer 20 different concentrations across 5 different academic areas. So things such as healthcare and real estate, again, marketing are all areas for you to declare concentrations should you choose to. So there's a lot of breadth and depth there in terms of the flexibility in the curriculum. And then the third component of the curriculum are our co-curricular modules. And those are those pieces that add the experiential elements, but also make sure that you have a holistic experience. The first of that is management practice. Management practice is designed for you to be able to take incomplete information or data, fill in the holes, and then effectively communicate those decisions to stakeholders. That takes place across your core or your first 3 semesters, and you're actually working with real clients. The second piece of that is leadership development. Leadership development, again, is a part of our core curriculum, but it takes place from an academic perspective of what is leadership. Then we move into how do you manage or lead others. And then the third piece of the leadership development is optional, but it's your own personal leadership style, and how do you lead in when you're stressed, how do you lead when you're happy. But again, it's a very holistic approach to leadership. And the third co-curricular module is international studies, or study, and we believe that everyone should get a stamp in their passport, as Kathleen likes to say, who has a lot of stamps in her passport. But we offer 5 standing trips to places like Nicaragua, China, Argentina, Brazil, and the Netherlands. And then the 6th trip is a rotating trip or a colloquium where students and faculty really design the trip and determine where we go. And so this past year they went to Colombia. They've also gone to Dubai. So all of those components, the core, the elective, and your co-curricular modules, is the content you'll receive here. How that's delivered, it's typically 2 courses per term, and the standard curriculum has you meeting each semester. Your courses would meet once per week, so you'd be in economics on Monday and accounting on Wednesday for your core, for example. Classes are held from 6:30 to 9:15, and everything takes place here on the Goizueta campus. So you park at Fishburne, walk over to Highland, grab your snack, and then go into class. So core classes meet Monday and Wednesday evenings. So your first 3 semesters you can plan to be in class on campus on Monday and Wednesday evenings. And then your electives take place Monday through Thursday evenings, again from that 6:30 to 9:15 time frame, and it'll just depend on the classes you choose what days you'll be in campus. We talked about the fact that the content or the core or your curriculum is delivered in a cohort structure. Again, it's that intentionally small community. Your first year, you're going to be in all your classes with the same groups of people. You'll all be on campus at the same time. Some of you will be in, I said, one class on Monday, and half of the section will be in the other class. But there's opportunities for you to meet, such as in management practice and your international study, giving you that ability to really know the business leaders sitting to your left and to your right. And the standard curriculum is 8 semesters or 32 months, and that's following the 2 courses per term. But you can accelerate if you so desire and finish in as little less 24 months. So again, we have a lot of flexibility. The program office does work with you to design the schedule that you need to really meet your academic needs.
Fantastic. Well, that's a lot of information. So
Lot.
we've gotten some good questions that have
Okay.
come in since I want to make sure I address them before we move to the next part. We can start, I'm trying to order them in terms of courses and then module stuff.
Okay.
So related to the core courses, is there anything in particular a prospect applying would be able to do to apply any of their credits or other experience that they've had in accounting or say in finance to be able to kind of test or opt out of any of these core classes?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Okay. So you are able to sit for waiver exams if so. Let's say you're a CPA and feel like you have a really strong grasp of accounting. You are able to sit for those exams. Their announcement will come out. They're usually held at the beginning of the semester. And if you do waive out of one of the core courses, then you replace it with an elective. So it allows you to move into your elective courses a lot faster. In terms of transferring credit, I think that was the other part of the question. If you have not received a degree for that particular class, it's possible that it could be reviewed and considered for transfer credit. The faculty in the program office would make that determination, and it's a separate process outside of the admissions decision or admissions process that would take place.
Great. Now, in terms of setting the schedule for your core classes and your elective courses, how far and at what stage in the process does someone build their schedule? Is that something I need to bring as a prospect when I'm applying, or do I do that when I get in the program?
So you do not need to know what you want to concentrate in or major in as when you get here. Your core courses are pretty much set for you, again, unless you waive out of a core class. So you can expect in your first year to be in class on Monday and Wednesday evenings from 6:30 to 9:15. And then when you move into your electives, you'll work with your program advisor, and every student here at Goizueta will have a program advisor to determine how to best set their schedule, again, to meet their academic needs. So you do not need to know that coming up front. Again, you can pretty much guarantee that your first year you will be in class Monday and Wednesday evenings.
Just to add on to that, as Rebecca said, there's nothing you need to declare up front or anything like that. You do have flexibility throughout the program. So even though the core courses are set out for you, they're not necessarily lockstep. So your program advisors will work with you to make sure that you know what you're doing. If you're starting a new job at the same time you're starting the program, something like that, you could lighten your load a little bit and then accelerate back later on. Technically, you have up to 5 years to complete the program, but I promise that is not common at all. The vast majority of students complete the program in the links you see on the screen and that Rebecca mentioned.
Fantastic. And the last one before we move on to talk a little bit more programmatically is the co-curricular modules. You mentioned management practice and sort of the regularity with which that happens, and leader development as well. The international study, when does that take place for individuals, and how do they choose or plan for that?
Right. So the 5 standing trips happen throughout the year. So we have 1 in January, 2 in May, and 2 trips that happen in August. And you can determine when you would like to go on your trip. You have within your time in the program. And there's various reasons that people choose to go to a trip. So if someone's said, hey, I've always wanted to go to China, what a great opportunity to look at business happenings in China. Some people say, this is the trip that fits my schedule the best. And any of those reasons are valid in terms of determining when you would like to go on your trip. The colloquium tends to happen during spring break, which is around March. So that's another option for you. And again, you can choose the trip based on whatever factors are important to you and the time that you attend, as long as it happens before you graduate. And the trips are about a week long, so you can plan in advance when you can take them. Some students tack on travel before and after, but you can expect to be in class and have some work or class assignments for a week.
Great. So I'm going to move us along to the next section, but definitely if you have more questions, continue to submit them, and I'll do like I did here, which is kind of hold them until the end and move us along. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the evening MBA class snapshot.
So when I talked about the power of the Goizueta network, or leveraging your network and the classmates sitting to the left and to the right with you, we're really saying that you get the opportunity here at Goizueta to study with the best. And so Kathleen and I are tasked with actually crafting a class and making sure that there is diversity in terms of thought, in terms of industry, in terms of background, that makes it into the class so that you can have a robust experience. We're also looking at academic readiness. This is a very rigorous course. And so all of those factors come into when we say we're crafting or building a class, because we're really crafting and building an experience that hopefully that you're excited to be a part of. And so the Evening MBA snapshot that's on your screen is just an overview of a typical class profile, and the different components that go into building that class or crafting that class in terms of academic readiness and fit and professional experience. Kathleen will break those components down, but it's just important to know that we're making sure, or we're trying to make sure, that you have the best experience and have the people sitting to the left and to the right with you who will be moving forward with you. This is going to possibly be your last degree and last time in class, and so we want to make sure that you have the most enriching and engaging conversations possible.
Fantastic. Before we leave this, I wanted to talk a little bit about the snapshot as a whole, and I know you guys are making decisions about that mix. But so if I'm looking at this as a prospect and I don't feel like I fall obviously into one of these ranges, what does that process of evaluation look like? How do I maybe dial up some of the areas where I know I'm going to be strong and address some of the areas where I may be outside of the range so that I can be a good fit for what you're looking for?
Sure. Well, one of the first things you want to do when you're reviewing this kind of list of numbers and that sort of thing is take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, because we want to provide you with data and information, but also want you to keep in mind that our process is definitely a holistic review process. It is not a formula. There's not a weighting system or equation that has to happen, other than some foundational components, which I'll talk about. But if you are worried about something, if you have any concerns, the first thing to do would be to talk to one of us. Rebecca and myself are available by email and by phone pretty much all the time. We're also available at events, our coffee chats, that sort of thing. Another thing to do would be ask questions about it in your interview. Towards the end of the interview, we interview all of our applicants. We ask you to come to campus so we can have an in-person meeting. And we make sure that there's time at the end of that to answer any questions that you have about your individual application or the program, anything like that. So that's a great time to address a concern. There's also an area on the application called the optional essay, which is very useful for people, particularly when they want to address maybe it's something they think is unusual in their application or isn't explained fully in another area. Maybe you had one semester, 1 year in your academic undergraduate experience that's just not fitting with the rest of it, and you want to address that situation, something like that. That's a great place to do that as well. We always say the more information, the better. So if you're looking at this profile and you're saying, I'm in it mostly, but there's one thing that's kind of out of whack, let us know and we'll talk you through whether that makes sense for you to change, if you could retake the test, something like that, if it's something you can work on, or if it's work experience years, if it's something like that, maybe one of our other programs might be a better fit for you, but we're happy to talk through those kind of questions with you individually.
Fantastic. I know I've gotten a couple questions in related to kind of work experience and figuring out how to build the profile, your application. I know that you're going to go into greater detail about that, so I'm not ignoring you. I'm just holding on to the questions here. I'm going to move us forward so we can talk a little bit about overall what the committee considers and the professional experience component, because that I think is a very important one.
Sure. Well, so as Rebecca and I have both mentioned, the application review process is absolutely holistic. So you're going to sit down, you're going to look at the application checklist. There's a ton of things on there. We're asking for a lot of information. So what I'd like to do now is kind of break it up into 3, we call them buckets, if you want to call them, groups of pieces of the application, why they're important to us, and what we're really looking for. So those 3 overarching groups of components fall into, firstly, professional experience, then your academic background, and thirdly, your Goizueta fit. So as I said, there's no formula, there's no kind of weighting system, but I will tell you that you have to have both the professional experience and a solid academic background to be a good fit for our program. And that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for qualified applicants who are going to add to the classroom experience, who are academically ready to hit the ground running in our coursework. We're looking for reasons to admit applicants rather than deny. And we're also looking for a variety of things. So there's not a standard right or wrong answer when it comes to these things. So in terms of professional experience, the reason why this is important to us is that the program is really designed for working professionals who bring at least 2 to 3 years of full-time progressive work experience with them into the classroom. The classroom experience is designed around being able to draw on your experience and incorporate it into the classroom conversation. The professors really enjoy hearing about how something you've dealt with live on the job relates to a case that you're studying in the class. things like that, how you are able to apply these new skill sets on the job the next day. It's really all part of that experience, as well as the idea that you're growing in your career during the program, and that's going to certainly incorporate into your the way you use the career resources, the career management center, the way you use the network and the people around you. So that's why part of why professional experience is important, but it's also setting you up for success at graduation in terms of MBA level jobs. That's another reason why we ask for professional experience on the incoming side as opposed to coming straight out of undergraduate. So the way that we're able to learn more about your experience is through your resume, of course, through your interview, which is an opportunity for you to sit down one-on-one with a committee member and talk through your resume primarily. Tell us more about your work experience, how you've gained exposure in your organization, how you've grown, how your responsibilities have changed, how you face challenges, that sort of thing. Your recommendations are certainly valuable in that sense. We ask for 2 professional recommendations. Typically, they're current or former supervisors or managers, maybe a close peer, something like that. One thing to remember with the recommendations is that it's not crucial that it has to be the CEO or the biggest title name person you have ever met, might be able to remember your name, something like that. It really should be someone who's worked with you, can really speak to your workplace personality, how you handle disappointments or stress, things like that. And you can read the questions. The form is available on the website, so you can see kind of what we're looking for and how that might be addressed by the people that you asked to write your recommendation. And then the essays. The essays are going to ask you to talk about your professional experience, particularly your career goals. That's certainly something we really want to hear about. How does your career map out ideally from here, and how does the MBA fit into that? And the essays also we'll address to you later a little bit more, but those are all ways that we're able to learn more about what it is, the work that you've been doing beyond just the job title and the years of experience. So again, there's not a formula, there's not a official minimum number of years of work experience, but we would like to see at least 2 to 3, and then that ranges on up to 10, I would say, but the majority of students are going to fall between the 4 and 8 years of work experience. So again, that's going to be an important part of the application for us.
Before we leave that, I wanted to address 2 questions that came in related to recommendations and essays. And so I'll talk about them here, but I know you're going to discuss them in a little bit greater detail. The first around recommendations is a question kind of to the idea of who would be your best recommender. And I know you mentioned you don't need to go for the biggest name that you might have ever met or somebody to impress, but is it okay to use non-work related recommendations? Does that help you or does it hurt you? And how then, if you're going to get somebody who doesn't work with you to recommend you, what should you look for?
Sure. Well, so speaking for Goizueta specifically, your 2 required recommendations really need to be professional in nature. Need to be people that you've worked with closely, interacted with on professional projects, things like that. So for some people, that's an unusual situation. If they're an entrepreneur or something like that, it could be a client, it could be a peer, something like that. So if you ever have any questions and you're not sure, you're worried about that, always contact us and we're happy to kind of advise you on that sense. If you do have someone that's not a professional relationship, but you think would write a great recommendation, or they've offered, or if you're friends with an alum of the program or an alum of Goizueta, have them send a supplemental recommendation. So they can either fill out the form or send an email to us directly. And so that could be a 3rd recommendation that we'd love to add to the file, but we'd need at least 2 true professional recommendations to complete your file. And then beyond that, maybe not more than 4. 4 is plenty. Beyond 2 and 3, it gets a little repetitive, but we certainly understand that maybe you're involved in a community organization or a religious organization, something like that, that's important to you, and you have someone that would like to recommend you. Or again, if you're friends with a graduate of our program and maybe they don't want to write a full professional recommendation, they could certainly just send us a note. Just let us know. We really enjoy hearing from our alums and our current students. So.
Fantastic. And the last one is about essays. This is kind of a good way to look at it is if you're using an essay to explain kind of the gaps in the experience, as you were mentioning before, like where your professional experience doesn't measure up, is it better to use the essay to do that or to use the interview? Which is the more effective way to communicate, questions you all might have as a committee?
Yeah, that's a great question. For the evening program specifically, I would say probably the interview, because we've actually shortened the essays a little bit. You'll be glad to hear. You may be surprised. You may not think they look short, but they're actually shorter than they used to be. But the interview is really when we're going to be walking step by step through your resume. And if there's a gap in the years, we want to hear about it. We want you to address it. We want you to tell us, what happened, how you were, if there was a layoff, if there was something like that. You don't need to hide anything from us. Again, the more information, the better. So we'd really rather hear your timeline, your growth, how you handled something like that, how you bounce back. So the interview would be a great chance to do that, and to talk through all those different maybe bumps, or if you had a track change where you thought you were really interested in law and then all of a sudden you decided, no, this is miserable, I'm going to start out, back step and start as an analyst in this area, something like that. That's certainly not uncommon. We don't look negatively at non-traditional paths, things like that, but the interview is a great chance to talk through that in your own words and really explain that to us.
Fantastic. All right, I'm going to keep us moving along, so I want to make sure that we get a chance to address everything. Continue your questions. They've been great ones so far. We're going to talk a little bit now about the academic backgrounds of individuals in the program.
Yeah. So the academic background, as I said, there's the two foundational pieces to being a successful student in our program. And so that's the professional experience, and then that's really also the academic background. The last thing on earth we'd want to do is bring in a student who just isn't quite ready for the rigor level of the classroom. So that's why we are going to look at your entire academic background. So that's all your transcripts from any undergraduate or graduate work as well as the test, which I know is everyone's favorite part, but it really is very useful for us. Either the GMAT or the GRE, they're both very effective predictors of academic success in our program, so that's why they're very useful to us as a committee. And it's also a great chance if maybe your undergraduate GPA isn't something you're exactly proud of, or you had a rough adjustment at the beginning of college, that GMAT or GRE score can be very reassuring to the committee that kind of struggle won't be repeated in graduate school or at our program. So as I said, we're going to use your transcripts, we're going to use your test scores. So we do accept the GMAT and the GRE. There's no official preference between the two. As you saw on the class profile, Rebecca mentioned we do publish GMAT averages. At this point, we don't have quite enough data to publish the GRE averages, but we can kind of give you a range. And also there's online tools that can convert the scores and give you a rough estimate of what a GRE score looks like on a GMAT scale. So you can look at our GMAT averages and compare that. So there's no official minimums or things like that. As I said, there's not a formula, but we do like to give you some benchmarks for reference, particularly on the quantitative section of the GMAT. You really want to aim for at least the 50th percentile. So if you're around our average score of 640, you're probably going to be well above a 50th percentile score on the quantitative section, but that's an area that a lot of people struggle with, and you really want to make sure you put in some preparation time for that test. A good GMAT score is a great benefit to you overall. It's not just about the admission process. It can be about the scholarship review process. It could potentially even be about job review process if you're aiming for some really specific niche fields like investment banking or management consulting in the three most selective firms, but that's just an FYI. So in general, there's not a specific degree you need to have or things like that. We really enjoy a variety of academic backgrounds in the classroom. So you'll see on a lot of our profiles, there's probably about 30% of the incoming class is typically a business undergraduate background or economics, but then there's a range from there out. So there's maybe 20 to 25% with different types of engineering backgrounds, liberal arts backgrounds. We have medical doctors in the program. We have art history majors. It's a wide range, and so we really enjoy that mix of experiences and as I said, as Rebecca said, thought training kind of processes, scientific versus business, all those different things make for very interesting conversations in the classroom. And master's degrees certainly are a great thing. It's not a requirement by any means. But I do want to mention there are no prerequisite courses to apply to the program, but if you haven't taken statistics, microeconomics, or accounting during your undergraduate time or previous coursework, then we may require them after your admission and before classes start. And the one specific one that the majority of incoming students will have to do is an accounting class, but we provide that for you. It's online, and then there's an in-person component once you get to campus, so you don't need to worry about anything when you're applying. We'll let you know through the admissions process.
Fantastic. Just one thing on this one, and I think it's a common question we get. So if somebody has taken the GMAT and has not scored as well as they wanted to, would you recommend they retake the GMAT or take the GRE?
That's a great question. So I'll refer to the best way to handle this situation, is to back up and take a practice test of both the GMAT and the GRE, see which one does better, and then focus on that one. Because they're different tests. They're designed differently. They're different kind of structures, that sort of thing. So one may be a better fit for you than the other. In general, we would recommend that if you've already taken one and you want to improve your score, stick with that same one. So we're comparing apples and apples. And there's absolutely no reason not to take a test more than once. We really strongly recommend that you plan to give yourself time to take the test more than once if you can. We're not going to average scores. We're always going to look at the highest total score, and we'll see the highest section scores. But in terms of changing tests, if you really feel that you're going to do significantly better on the other one, then that's fine. But just, I would recommend trying to choose the right one from the beginning and then focus your prep time on that if possible. But it's up to you. So.
And I did also want to mention too that your scores are valid for 5 years. So let's say maybe you were thinking about applying for another master's program earlier on, and you started to progress in your current career field, and you might have a GMAT or GRE exam already on file. So that's also a great place to look to see, is my score valid? Is it something that I'm comfortable with submitting? And then you might already have passed that hurdle and can move on to the other components of your application.
Fantastic. Before we leave that idea, the question does come up about whether or not, when somebody's retaking the test, how do they let you know that that's something that they want to do? And do they need to let you know during the application process that they're planning to take it again?
That's a great question, because we really do want you to have the opportunity to make sure you're putting forth your best possible application. So if you get the application done, you take the test towards the end or towards the deadline, and you decide you really want to retake it, you send an email to us. Particularly if you've already interviewed, that person will probably be your main point of contact at that point. So let us know. We can put your application on hold, wait for the new score, and then review it with your new score. That's perfectly fine. And so we at the same time, we want you to have an application that you're happy with as well. So I think that's a great way to do that. And also, if you're filling out your online application form, you can put a future test date in the test section so that we'll know that it's coming, and we can wait for your application so that we don't complete it out and send it to committee without your most current score.
And just as a follow-up, can you share with them roughly how long it takes after you've taken the test for the scores to get to us? So if you take it on Tuesday, it doesn't necessarily get to us on Tuesday.
Right. It takes 2 to 3 weeks to get to us. It's sent officially through GMAT, the governing body, at least with GMAT. GRE can take a little bit longer, so I'd plan for 3 weeks. But so you'll have an opportunity when you sit down and you take the test. There's a drop-down list of schools, and you should send it to us. You should never cancel a score, and really just don't cancel a score. Send the scores to us. We'd rather see an improvement or something like that, a change in scores, than see a missing score. But yeah, so ideally you'll take the test at least 3 weeks before the deadline, before the round deadline you're aiming for. But if something happens, you can just squeeze it in. Please, the best thing is to communicate with us and not send something in after the deadline and expect us to backtrack and rush something in, because we really have built the deadlines with a tight turnaround time already. So getting everything in before the deadline is going to be to your benefit and our benefit too. So we'll be even happier to read your application.
So we're going to move on and talk about an area that I think is critically important when you think about our program, which has to do with the fit, kind of the idea of, are you a fit for Goizueta? And I know that both Rebecca and Kathleen have mentioned how intentional we are with planning the class and selecting individuals from a statistical standpoint of the range and such. But most important is sort of the process that these ladies take along with other members of admissions to ensure that the class has the right dynamic. So we're going to talk a little bit about how that dynamic is created so that we can be most mindful to what people are looking for.
Right. So Goizueta Fit is kind of a broad term that we're really defining as, do they fit with our goals and our values and our community, our engaged community, which is what we talk about, our intimate learning experience, our powerful network. It's all built on that engaging experience, and that you're enjoying the people around you. You're getting to know the people sitting next to you in the classroom. You're benefiting from their experience, and in reverse, they're benefiting from yours. So when you see on the online application form, there's a section for extracurricular involvement, which is as hard to say as it is to explain, because it's strange. You know, you've been out of school probably for at least a couple of years. You may not think of what you do outside of work as extracurricular, but that's what we mean essentially. So if it's something from your undergraduate time that was significant to you and maybe relevant to your future work or your future leadership, or was a leadership position, please do include that on your application and your resume. But also anything you do outside of the workplace at this point, whether it's a hobby or whether it's an organization. A lot of you are involved in community organizations, nonprofit support, religious organizations, social organizations, professional organizations in particular. Please do include that information and let us know. We want to know as much as we can about you in a holistic terms, because you're here at business school to learn and to study, but you bring all of you with you. So we want to know as much as we can about all of that background and experience, that sort of thing. And so the interview, we'll talk about that too. You know, we'll ask kind of what your involvement is outside of work, how you spend your free time, which right now might be studying for the test or working on your applications, but we understand that you might also be a home microbrewer or who knows, I don't know.
If you're a home microbrewer, please apply to the program as soon as possible and bring samples. That's really how you handle that portion.
You're always welcome to bring samples. You know, different things like that. And your essays as well. We actually make sure that there's kind of an interesting, little bit lighthearted, fun fact is one of the essay questions. So it's really just getting to know you as a whole person, and whether it's, you know, that you lived in Africa for a year, or it's just that you're really interested in some kind of unusual, not as common thing. It doesn't have to be that you saved the world or cured cancer, because we're guessing you probably haven't yet, but someday down the road that might happen. Who knows? Anyway, I'm sidetracking. But really the ultimate goal for us is to bring in a diverse, interesting class and people that are going to mesh and mix well together, and that's not cookie cutters, because there are going to be a few of you that are Eagle Scouts, but if we had 100 Eagle Scouts, that'd be a strange classroom experience. I gotta be honest. You know, we really want a mix of different people and a mix of different backgrounds, and that really does enhance everyone's experience. And you're also going to be challenged by people. You need to be butt heads with people who are coming from different cultures or different backgrounds, and you need to learn how to get over those differences, and you know, you're going towards the same goal, which is, that's why there's so much teamwork and things like that in these courses. So it's a little amorphous, and that's why it's hard to pin down. There's not a right Goizueta fit necessarily, but we want to bring in people who are going to interact positively with their teammates, who are aiming towards the same goal. And we're very fortunate in that Goizueta is a place that the students who are here because they absolutely want to be. They're very motivated to be here, to work hard and get the most out of their MBA experience as possible. And so the Goizueta fit part isn't quite is probably the easier part of this whole arrangement.
Before we leave this part, if I'm considering, or if a prospect is considering something that they would want to share, they think makes them a good fit, before they drop it in an essay or kind of, you know, invest a lot of direction to it, is it okay for them to reach out to you and sort of say, like, I want to talk about this in my essay, or I'm interested in highlighting that? Are you able to give them guidance on that before they move forward, or is that something that they should just go forward and do in the essay?
We can give you a good idea of, if you're worried about where to put something, we can tell you kind of where something makes sense, but we can't tell you, oh, that's good or that's bad necessarily on the front end. But if you're kind of saying, I want to talk about this somewhere, is this an appropriate place to do that we're happy to we're answer. I mean, you can always call and ask, and we'll tell you if we don't feel like we can necessarily tell you what you should say or how to answer the questions on the application, but we can tell you kind of the information we hope to gain from it. So if that's
fantastic.
That's vague.
but it clarifies, I think, because I think there'll be individuals who are looking and trying to figure out, you know, as somebody's asking, like, where do I put something like that?
Yes.
And is it the
so
right?
That we can talk
is it the
about.
right thing to do?
But we can't give you sample
right.
A+ essays. Sorry.
There's a method to the madness. So more importantly, we're looking and talking about when you should be doing all this application process. When do you need to make these things happen? So as you can see on the screen here are deadline notifications and deposit dates for the rounds coming up.
So at Goizueta, we operate on round deadlines, and this is really an opportunity to clearly communicate when we can expect to hear from you, when you can expect to hear from us. And so I think it helps to lower the stress level. I mean, that's my opinion. Hopefully it does that same for you. So our next round coming up, our next round deadline is April 25th. So any application materials that receive between February 22nd and end of day April 25th would be considered in our round 3. And that means that you can expect to receive your decision notification from us in Opus is on May 21st. So that's pretty clear. You don't have to worry and call because that's when they'll come out. If we're missing any application components, we definitely will reach back out to you and say, hey, maybe the resume didn't upload properly. We reach out for that information and get that from you so that you can make sure that you're completed in that round. If your application is complete, you'll receive your notification on that date, and then you clearly know when you'll need to make your decision on if you want to deposit with us, and we feel that you will, but that's, so again, this is all clearly communicated to you. If for some reason, like Kathleen mentioned, you got all your application materials in and you've decided to retake an exam or something like that, then your application would move down into the next round that we receive the completed materials. And so we want you to apply in the round that you feel most comfortable. We wouldn't have a round up here if we feel that it would disadvantage you in any way. So you should apply in the earliest round that you feel that you have the strongest application, or you're going to put your best application forth. The main distinction between applying through the rounds is when you receive your decision notification and when classes start. So if you look at round 5, your decision notification comes out July 23rd, and program immersion or orientation starts the first week of August. So this is just a quick turnaround time, and some people operate very well with that quick turnaround time. So if you applied in round 1, you basically have a whole year to plan. And we also like to encourage you that once classes start, you can expect that your free time will be geared towards being in class. And so some people like to know earlier on, so they maybe can plan last minute vacations or start to work with their employer about how scheduling will work. So that's really the distinction between applying through the round. So again, it's just important to apply in the round that you feel the strongest and most comfortable with your application.
Fantastic. Before you leave, this is a question about kind of future applications, and it's a good way to think about it. If someone's planning on applying for fall of 2015, do they need to wait until all of the 2014 rounds are completed, or should they go ahead and start that process now and provide it?
So we really will be kind of finishing up the class through the end of August. So it's best if you're looking at fall 2015 for your start date to start thinking about submitting application materials in September and October. And we'll send out a notification saying we have our new round deadlines for fall 2015 start date. So right now we're really going to be focusing on filling the class and completing the class for this fall 2014. As you see, we work right up until the deadline. So if you're interested, just wait maybe until September or October to start submitting materials. Of course, you're welcome to come to programming, visit classes now if to fill out the program.
Fantastic. And then the last question is more related to if I'm interested in applying to more than one program. Do I need to do different applications to do that process, or can I use the current?
Oh, thank you so much for that question. So you can actually apply to multiple Goizueta programs with just one application. And it's some work on the back end, but when you're filling out your application, you should just fill out and list the preference of your program. So evening number 1, 2-year program number 2. Yes, evening is number 1. Shameless plug. And then different committees, it is a separate review process, and you would be reviewed by different committees. You would receive your decision notification on following the schedule of your first preference program. So if evening is your first preference program and you apply in round 3, you would receive all your decisions on May 21st. Little technical difficulties.
Right, so slight technical difficulties, all as well.
So, but yes, you can apply to one. There's a slight processing fee that's incurred, but we do try to make it as easy and as streamlined a process for you as possible.
So we're going to move on to talk about something I know that there have been some questions on, and there always are questions on, and that's relation to scholarships and financial aid as you look to finance your degree. So there's some topics that are here that you can relate to, but please continue to ask your questions, and we'll get them answered.
And so we understand that this is a significant financial investment for you. And this, for many of you, will be your last degree or your terminal degree. And so you do want to give some consideration in terms of how you'll be financing that. So the typical tuition per semester breaks down to $9,200 a semester, giving you a total program cost of about $73,000. And there's different ways that our students are able to finance that. First of all, we'll talk about scholarships. So we do offer one merit scholarship. It's $18,000 and it's spread over your duration of the program. The great thing about that is there's absolutely no additional paperwork or materials that you need to submit. All applicants will be reviewed for scholarship consideration. And so it's $18,000. It's spread out over the duration of your time in the program. And what we're really looking for in terms of scholarships are the standouts among the class. And so again, you go back to that class profile and you see the ranges and the averages. The scholarship recipients tend to be higher in terms of GMAT. GMAT average tends to be around a 690. GPA tends to be about 3.5 or higher. But we're really looking for people that we feel will contribute significantly in the classroom in terms of their professional experience and their academic readiness, but also be really engaging members of the community as current students, but also as alumni. And you will also receive information on your decision notification if you've been awarded a scholarship. So we give you all the information we feel that you need to make an informed decision. There are also ways that you could be re-reviewed for a scholarship. So let's say you've been admitted and later on you receive, you retake the GMAT exam or you receive a significant promotion. Please submit that information to us because we can re-review admitted applicants or admitted students for scholarships. The second piece of that, of course, is financial aid. A significant number of our students are looking at funding their MBA through personal contributions, maybe some federal financial aid, and also corporate company sponsorship. Most importantly, corporate financial sponsorship is not required for admissions, but many employers do have some type of educational benefit or payback program. So that's a great place to start with your company's HR representative to see what type of educational benefits are offered to you. And of course, domestic students and international students are available for different types of financial aid. And again, once admitted, you receive more details about that, but know that most students are using some combination of scholarships, personal finances, and financial aid to finance their degree.
Only one question relevant to this from the scholarship standpoint. And if I am applying and I got a better test score or something that might have improved my chances of getting a scholarship, should I submit new information? And if so, how should somebody do that?
Yes. If anything changes in the application process, please submit that new information. Again, if you've already completed your information, as Kathleen said, you should just submit that or let that the person you interviewed know, to send them an email and say, hey, I have new test scores, send them official copies, and you can just send it to us directly and we'll make sure that it gets added to your file. And of course we do re-review or review the first go round for scholarships.
Fantastic. So I think it's a good way to review the idea that there is funding available, whether it be scholarship-wise or financial aid-wise, but we understand that everybody is figuring out the best way to make this program an affordable fit for them. And there are many ways to kind of approach that. So we're going to move on and talk about after the application, because we're sure all of you are now completely jazzed up and are logging off this chat to go finish your application immediately. So we want to know things about what they should do after your application is submitted in order to make sure you're staying on track.
Sure. Well, yeah, we talk a lot about the application and what happens before the application, but we don't talk much about what happens afterwards. And it's important for you to know, and one of the reasons we've been so happy with the round process is that you have a clear notification date. You know exactly when you're going to hear from us, so you can get your application in and then just forget about it, hopefully. I do want to make a note just to reiterate and emphasize that when we say your entire application needs to be complete by the application deadline, we really do mean the whole thing. So that includes the interview. You self-schedule your interview. So before the deadline. You don't wait for an invitation. You self-schedule that anytime before the deadline, but just want to make sure that we mention that again. Because, but after you've gotten everything in, you'll get a notification from us if we're missing anything or if it's complete, that sort of thing. And then once you get to the decision notification, you can expect to hear from us through our online system, which is how you submit your online application form, your Opus account. So once you submit your online application form, you'll be registered as an applicant. You'll be able to see your online application checklist. That's how you'll track that. And then on the notification date, we'll update that system with your decision. So that decision can either be admit, or admit with scholarship, which would not be, you would not see that on the screen, but we'll notify our scholarship recipients separately. Then the other options are deny, which is sad face, or waitlist. So if you are not admitted, if you are given a denied decision for this year, we're going to encourage you to reapply, and we're happy to talk with you as much as we can about what that means. So we ask you to wait, give us some time to get through the incoming class, and then in August we're happy to give you as much feedback as we can. So most of the time it's going to be, here's the incoming class profile, here's how your profile matched up with that and what the differences were, and there may be some things that are workable, like retaking the test or maybe taking coursework, things like that, to reassure the committee on your academic readiness, or it may be some other things that you may not be the right fit for this program, but we could make some recommendations about other programs to look into. So there's not a possibility to reapply for that current application cycle, but there absolutely is a possibility to reapply for the following year or later. And pretty much every year there's someone who was not admitted on their original application, but then was admitted in a later year. So it absolutely is a possibility. Waitlist is a little bit different. Waitlist is an option for us, for the evening MBA committee, to really give you some more feedback and say that we really like your overall application, but either we just aren't sure right now, we need to wait and see what the rest of the pool looks like. But more often we have a specific request for you. So it could be to retake a test, it could be to provide us a new recommendation or some additional information, or a secondary interview. We just felt like we needed to ask you some more questions. So as Rebecca said, there's not an advantage or disadvantage in applying in earlier or later rounds, but if there is a waitlist decision, if you've applied in an earlier round, you have more time to kind of address those requests. But we also keep that in mind in the later rounds. If we know there's not enough time to do something, we may talk to you about, we may preemptively talk to you before we release that waitlist decision so you can get started on something. But we try to be very specific in that feedback. So if you are waitlisted, you'll get an email from us that says, please let us know if you'd like to be on the waitlist. So if you say yes and you fill that form, you send that form back into us, we're going to give you some specific feedback, and then we'll go from there. So that's absolutely a possibility, and every year there definitely are people who are admitted off the wait list. It's not a final sentence or anything like that. Typically there's something specific the committee would like to see from you. One
quick question before you leave this area is about the idea of being denied. Is there any possibility to be moved from deny to waitlist, or is there, other than just having them reapply to that next stage, is that the best next course of action for them?
Really the best thing to do is to contact us and ask for deny feedback for future application years. Unless there's something crazy that happened, there's some significant change. But really, when we say a decision is final, we mean it. We do work really hard to make sure we've done a thorough review of every application, so we don't throw out denied decisions lightly. So we make sure that we've really reviewed and that it's just not a good fit. If we're not sure about something, we'll use that waitlist decision. So if you're denied for this year, it's just hopefully an opportunity for next year, and we're happy to give you as much information as we can, but certainly encourage you to look at the class profile, ask those questions about where the match is for you, where the disconnect is, and if that's something that's workable, or maybe this isn't the right fit for you. But
great. So I'm going to move us on to next steps, because I know you guys are kind of excited to get moving into the process and figure out what you should do next to make sure you can present the right application.
Yeah, well, so as we've talked about, this is a great, hopefully you have a little more information and inside view of how we're reviewing your application, what we're looking for. As we said, always contact us with questions. We try to be as transparent as possible, so you can reach us individually through email, through phone, but also through our coffee chats. We have Coffee with Goizueta every month, and so it's a drop-in, basically office hours for us to come near you. We'll be in Collier Hills later this week. We'll be in Midtown and Buckhead different times this spring. So drop in, grab a coffee, meet some current students, and talk with us. It's a great chance. Also, we really encourage you to schedule a class visit if you haven't already. That's a fantastic way to picture yourself in the classroom where you'll be this time next year, to meet several current students and see the diversity in the classroom and understand kind of that we are really looking for a great, interesting class profile mix. And maybe ask them questions about what they were surprised about the application process, or what they wish they had known, that sort of thing. And then, as I said, schedule your admissions interview. Really, that absolutely is a great place to start. I would encourage you probably already looked through the website a little bit already, so you know something about the program, but start looking at the essay questions and schedule your admissions interview now, because you want to make sure that it's not right before the deadline or not after the deadline. You don't want to miss out on appointments, things like that. But it also is to your benefit, because you can schedule your interview at any point in the application process. You don't have to have submitted anything beforehand. And it's also, as we said, a chance for you to ask questions of us. So we're going to ask you a lot of questions, but we're going to leave time so that you can ask questions about the program, about the application, about your application, all that good stuff. So it's definitely to your benefit to go ahead and schedule that interview appointment. You can do it online. You can see several different times and days of the week available. You'll probably be meeting with either Rebecca or myself, so you've already met us, and there you go.
Nothing but friendly from here.
Yes, and I did also want to encourage you, we do have a robust social media platform, so you can follow us on Twitter or on Instagram. The best way to do it is the social index at Goizueta, and you can connect to us via those mediums as well, because sometimes we may tweet out something exciting going on, and that's the only way to find out. So that's another great way to connect with us.
And the marketing team appreciates the shameless plug. We'll make sure your check gets cut shortly.
Thank you.
I'm going to make sure that we wrap this up and follow up with the fact that there will be slides and this video available about a week from now, so you guys can go back through this as you're building your application, as you're setting your schedule for taking your GMAT, and as you're scheduling your interviews to reach out to these young ladies to talk a little bit more about your application. I highly encourage you to take advantage of all of the resources that are here and available. Part of the reason our program is so distinctive is that there is an intentional process to the application and review, and how the admissions teams looks at the creation of a class. And so if you partner with them, you can really get the most out of the application process, out of being admitted, and then be well on your way to sort of scheduling your time in the program. So hopefully you'll reach out, you'll find a date to do your interview and kind of keep the process moving. There are events upcoming that you can find those on our website or on our social media index, as Rebecca so happily plugged. But for now, we're going to go ahead and log off. If you have any other questions, you can reach out to both these two ladies via email or Twitter or whatever else they'd like to respond via. And we hope you have a great rest of your day.